Good afternoon, folks. This is Martin Sorge with Uptown United and the Uptown Chamber. As folks are logging in here, just want to give you, we're going to give folks a couple minutes just to log in while we get started here. Hope everyone is enjoying this beautiful Wednesday here in Uptown. I want to give a big thanks to all of the elected officials for joining us and for everyone for spending some time with us. We're really excited when we do this next year to be in person like we used to be, so that we can see everyone's smiling faces and get to chat and all that stuff, which I know we dearly miss and have really enjoyed the past few weeks, really getting out and seeing folks in the neighborhood, walking along the street, chatting with our local business owners. And really getting to see all the wonderful people in our neighborhood out and about. So we're excited for that. Like I said, I think we have a good amount of folks here. So I'm going to kick things off. Just a big welcome and thank you to all of our elected officials for joining us and everybody here for attending. Again, my name is Martin Sorge. For those of you I don't know, I'm the executive director of Uptown United and the Uptown Chamber of Commerce. And then we are joined today by Jackie Loewe, who is our board chair, who's going to be moderating the discussion with the elected officials. But before we kick that off, I just wanted to do just a quick year in review, a quick review of the past year here at our organizations. All right, so again, thank you for joining us today for the State of Uptown. We're excited to hear from our elected officials here in a little bit. Also want to give a huge thank you to our first annual sponsor, Wintrust Bank Uptown. They're a great community partner, and the support of our annual sponsors make all the work that we do here at Uptown United and the Chamber possible. So big thank you to our friends at Wintrust Bank Uptown, which is right there at Lawrence and Sheridan. If any business or organization here is interested in becoming an annual sponsor with us, you can feel free to reach out to me or visit our website at exploreuptown.org/sponsor. So what have we been up to since last year? It's been a whole lot. The biggest thing that we've focused on in the past year is really supporting our local businesses and organizations. Both the 300 or so folks that are members of the chamber, but also all the businesses and organizations are in the community. So most of our team have really spent their time one-on-one talking with our local businesses, communicating with our organizations in their neighborhood to really support them through the pandemic and through other issues that have come up for the past year. So whether that's been informing businesses of changing regulations and rules from the city, which seem to happen every few weeks, informing them of financial opportunities that can help their business or programs that can help their business, putting on educational events to support the businesses, but really mostly just one-on-one talking with folks, because we know it really, most small business owners aren't behind their computer all the time. They really require us to come, visit them and support them. So just wanted to highlight a few of our local business folks that we've helped. And another thing we've done is helped activate our sidewalks. So you'll see outside of the Green Mill and Fiesta Mexicana, we helped them with our partners at Smith Group and Walsh Floor set up some dining tables in the parking lane there to get them a little more space to be able to do their business. So those are just a few things we've done over the year. Like most of us, we've spent a lot of time on the screen doing Zoom networking, Zoom educational events, Zoom roundtables, working with partners across the city, but we've spent a lot of time on our screens getting to connect when we couldn't connect in person as frequently. One thing that our team is really proud of is we really hit the pavement whenever there would be COVID relief funds available. And we estimate that we've probably helped secure well over $2 million in COVID relief funds for small businesses and nonprofit organizations in the Uptown area. If that's through the Paycheck Protection Program, the EIDL, big thanks to our folks from the state here. I think we've got over $1 million in business interruption grants to local businesses just here in Uptown. Our staff called or visited every single business, every single restaurant or bar in Uptown to let them know about the SBA's Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And we know we've probably heard of several $1 million coming to local restaurants because of that. We also initiated an emergency storefront rebate program when some of our storefronts were vandalized last year, so that business owners could quickly fix their windows or doors if they needed to last summer. So we're really proud of being able to support businesses and getting them the urgent fund they needed, the funds they needed in the past year. We've also kind of re-envisioned some of our events. Like I said, we moved a lot of our events virtual, but we also got creative. We did things like the DIY Argyle Night Market last summer. And then we did our first ever Uptown Art Week last August, our art weekend last August, which was a way where we could do an event that highlighted local artists, but that was COVID safe and didn't require people all gathering at the same place at the same time, which was an event that people really loved. We engaged more than 40 artists and dozens of new businesses, dozens of new pieces of public art around the neighborhood. And we were also able to highlight more than 100 existing pieces of public art in the neighborhood. Another program that we launched last year is that we are grateful that we're chosen to be a new Chicago Business Center, which is a new program through the city's Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. We're one of 8 centers across Chicago that offers additional support for businesses, particularly around licensing support, financing, really with a focus on underserved populations, and other professional services and sector-specific support for local businesses. So we're really excited to be able to provide additional support for businesses actually all across the North Lakefront area. That program serves more than just Uptown. We also moved, so we have a brand new office right on the storefront at 4619 North Broadway. So if you are in the neighborhood, give us a call, schedule a time to come see our new office. So it's a great new space that really encourages collaboration and makes us much more accessible. So we're excited to be here. Also, the Chamber, which used to be known as Business Partners, the Chamber for Uptown, is back to its old name, the Uptown Chamber of Commerce. So that's what the Chamber is called. And yeah, that's our name. And really just always want to shout out our really awesome team that we have here in the office. So you'll see me there first, but also we have John Blick, we have Jen Bowman, who's our new office manager, Greg Carroll, who organizes great events like this, Heather Sanger, who is our Chicago Business Center manager, Hawk Tran, who is our communications manager, Sarah Wilson, who's a program manager working to support businesses during this big CTA construction project we have, and then Justin Weidel, our Director of Neighborhood Services. We have a stellar team here. Don't hesitate to reach out to anyone on our staff if we can ever help you out. Just wanted to look ahead real quick at the next year here with Uptown United and the Chamber, because we have a lot of exciting things on the horizon. One, getting back to in-person connections. Really, that's what we do here at the Chamber, is connect people and businesses to resources. So we're really excited to getting back to connecting people in person. We're really excited to announce that we're working with the Chicago Department of Transportation and Choose Chicago on a brand new program called Chicago Al Fresco, which will really transform some of the parking space along Argyle Street and Uptown into people space. So additional space for outdoor dining, for creative activities, for arts and other programming. That program will launch later this summer, and it will be really transform Argyle Street, which is already such an awesome place, into a really vibrant, active, art-filled corridor with more dining and exciting opportunities. So we couldn't be more grateful for the city and for Choose Chicago for choosing Uptown for this really great program, really at a time when our businesses in that corridor can use as much help and as many customers as they can get. We're excited to bring the Argyle Night Market back starting in August this year. It's hard to think about crowds this big, but we're excited to bring folks back to our community for this annual tradition. Another big announcement, Uptown was chosen as one of 10 neighborhoods that Choose Chicago, the city's tourism agency, will be promoting in the next year. So we're going to be working with Choose Chicago to get tourists here to visit our neighborhood, our beautiful lakefront, and support our great local businesses, organizations, arts, venues, and all that. So we couldn't be happier that Choose Chicago chose Uptown to highlight this year. And then August 6th through 15th is our Uptown Art Week. This is your first taste of our cool poster designed by Anthony Llewellyn, who's done a couple murals in the neighborhood. So mark your calendars for that. We decided to expand it to a full week this year. So there are some big, exciting art projects that will be popping up this year. So make sure you're in town during that week so you can enjoy it. And we really hope to bring back Casino Uptown, our big annual gala this year, sometime in early November. So we're figuring out the details on that, but we really hope to get that back up and running because that's one of our favorite events every year. And that's it for me. I just really, again, want to thank Wintrust Bank, our annual sponsor, and thanks to all the elected officials for joining us here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And I will just like to introduce Jackie Loewe, who is the board chair of Uptown United, also resident and runs Sheridan Park Consulting. So Jackie, over to you.
Thank you very much, Martin. That was fantastic to hear all of the opportunities that are coming in the near future, especially for in-person situations. I cannot wait to get back to that. Before I jump in with our esteemed panel here to hear from their perspective of the state of Uptown, I wanted to do a quick thank you to some small business owners who volunteer their time to serve on this board of Uptown United and the Uptown Chamber. A special shout out to my cohort, Stephanie Forrester, for her leadership through this past year and a half, getting us through very challenging times. She is our Uptown Chamber chair and also a small business owner here in Uptown of a business called Ensemble Media. So really appreciate her continued many, many hours while also trying to run her business to keep everybody up and running and reaching out to our chamber members. And again, a quick, just can't thank the staff enough for their continued productivity, working remotely in pretty difficult times, and their creativity in doing outreach to all the small businesses in Uptown to get the message out. So thank you to that incredible staff, and also managed to move into a new office space through all of that as well. So incredible accomplishments, and couldn't be prouder to be leading an organization that has made all of that happen. Before we get to our esteemed panel, we've been focusing a lot on small businesses and how we all got through this as small business owners. I wanted to take a real quick minute to introduce, and if you haven't been to First Sip Cafe, please put that on your list of things to do in person. I'd like to introduce Erin Huang and ask her, as an owner of First Sip Cafe, how the heck are you doing? And how did you get through this crazy past year and a half? And let us know what's going on and what you see for the future. So Erin?
Yeah. Oh, hi. Glad to be here. The past, I would say, year and a half has been really rough for us, like all other small businesses, and then especially for a coffee shop, because the bulk of our customers tend to be more of students and people working from home, and now everyone's working from home, and students went home for the season as well. So it's a little bit rough, but I think we've tried to keep a positive outlook on it. On the plus side, we don't have employees, so we don't feel guilty about other people's livelihoods. It's only about ours that we have to be concerned about. So that kind of works for our benefit in a weird way. And then we just try to be positive. Like, I think it's a pandemic. Everyone's being affected by it. So like, obviously it's not personally just affecting us per sip, but you know, the entire industry and in coffee shops in general. And we've just been doing what we can to kind of like scrimp and save and go and try to not minimize or add any expenses or anything like that. But we're glad that indoor dining is open again and things are back to full capacity, and we're now maskless at first step for anyone that's vaccinated. So things are slowly coming back to normal.
Great. Well, we're so glad you guys persevered and are resilient and figured out how to continue to offer a very unique place to go and have a hot drink or a cold drink and just get to experience Argyle Street in the way that you guys have done it, and so welcoming when you go in. So it's been great to know that you guys have gotten through this, and thank you for joining us and taking a couple questions from us as well.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, great. And go to First Sip, all of you who have not experienced it yet. So thank you. So with that, I would like to move on to our esteemed panels. Thank you all for being so patient. I think first up, let's hear what the heck's going on in from our Springfield leadership. So I'm going to turn it over initially to, so we have both Representative Harris and Senator Simmons with us. Senator Simmons' name might be a little new to some of you, as he's our newest leader in the area. So I'll let him take a minute when we get to him to share a little bit more about himself. But everybody else should be pretty familiar with. By the way, I see some folks are already doing it, but please, if you have some questions for our group, just type them in the Q&A section, and we will try to get to as many of those as we can after we've heard from our political leadership on what's going on in Uptown. So we'll start off with Representative Harris. If you could just share with us, oh, I wanted to just real quickly say, I wanted to thank both Senator Simmons and Representative Harris for their very recent comprehensive legislative update emails. If you're not on their lists to get those, I highly encourage you to. It's a great way to understand what's going on, and I've read both of them, and thank you for a lot of detailed information. You guys have been busy. So with that, I will now turn it over to Representative Harris to give us his update from Springfield in terms of how it's having a direct impact on Uptown. Representative Harris.
So thanks, Jackie, and thanks everyone at the Uptown Chamber and the whole Uptown community. I mean, especially for the resilience that you folks have shown, just getting through these last couple months. And you mentioned the art installations and the art walks around the neighborhood. I mean, from watching those go in by my house, being able to walk up and down and see them during some like the darkest times of the pandemic, seeing that stuff and seeing how it just uplifted me and everyone else who walked by, it really made a difference. So, I take pictures. I take pictures on my phone and send it to people around the state, because it gave a little bit of hope and a little bit of brightness, during those times. So, I just wanted to thank everyone who was involved for that. And I think Mike may talk some about legislation. So I'm going to, just kick off talking a little bit about some of the budget things we've been working on. We really had two priorities budgetarily this year. One, to stabilize our state finances following, the pandemic and set us up for a couple years of growth. And the second thing is then to support businesses and communities who need resources and additional support coming out of the pandemic, and to stimulate the businesses that, really support a lot of our city economy, our state economy, and particularly our neighborhoods. Convention, tourism, hospitality, arts, culture. We're putting a lot of resources into those. On the state budget level, we're really proud that we have balanced our budget this year. We paid off $3 billion of debt. The bill backlog, and you often hear people say how bad our state's bill backlog is now down to the lowest point it has been in a decade. And a lot of this has been through, some, really, tough fiscal measures and good management by our new governor, J.B. Pritzker. We had no tax increases in our budget. We closed about $750 million of loopholes on corporations that had been passed in the Trump budget, so that people at the very top of the economy are paying their fair share. And we took those funds and we turned around and we invested about $350 million more into our local public schools. We've invested in about $80 million for violence prevention in communities across the state of Illinois, including here in Chicago, including Uptown and Rogers Park, our different violence interrupter programs. We're investing in expanding mental health, substance abuse treatment in our neighborhoods, suicide prevention, special programs for students and first responders, who have had really traumatic times, more than a lot of the rest of us during this pandemic. But in addition to just those sort of treatment kind of things, we're also investing in correcting the disparities that led to everything we now know that's been shown about the epidemic and how social determinants of health hurt some communities more than others. We're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into affordable housing, to upgrading safety net hospitals, to building healthcare capacity in neighborhoods across the state, summer jobs for youth, youth employment, after school programming, trying to be sure we're investing in all the things that are preventative and not just remediation. We'll be putting about $300 million more into small business assistance. The smallest businesses will have an opportunity for early application. That will become available July 1. Organizations like the Chamber, there'll be support for, because we realize it's going to take people time to do applications for these programs, and smaller businesses often don't have the resources. So we're putting money into the community. So if people are very small, if they have language challenges or different in language, and as you can hear right outside my window, Street and Sand has come by to empty my dumpster, so I apologize for that going on. And in addition, support for arts, culture, music, dance, to kickstart those folks who just contribute sort of the life and soul of our community, but also our economy. We're going to be putting millions into attracting conventions and tourism back to city of Chicago and state of Illinois, to kickstart our hotels, our bars and restaurants. So that's just a quick summary. I've been watching the clock. I think I ran my time out, and so now it's time to switch over to Mike.
Thank you very much, Representative Harris. That's encouraging news. Glad to hear that laundry list of incredible things that are happening. Let's go to Senator Simmons, and if you would, before your remarks, why don't you, as our newest political leader, give us just a real quick overview of your background.
Yes, I would be happy to. Thanks so much, Jackie. It's good to be in Uptown. For those who have not met me yet, Mike Simmons, I'm the new state senator for the 7th District, and I was sworn in February 6th, actually literally 4 months ago. It's almost to the date. And so the good news is that I've lived in Uptown for 12 years. I've been connected to the neighborhood my whole life. I went to elementary school in the neighborhood. Originally grew up in Lincoln Square. Both of my parents were small business owners. My mom opened and ran a salon in Rogers Park, Salon Pastiche, for 25 years. And a number of her clients came from the Uptown area, really all across the North Lakefront. And my dad was an immigrant from Ethiopia. And one of the first things he did after he got political asylum some years later was to open his own small business. So he opened a bar called the Wild Hare that was situated in Lakeview and operated for 25 years. Was an institution on the North Side, an institution in the Midwest, and brought a lot of people from our community together. So I come from that sort of heritage. Lifelong connections to the area, and really excited to be serving as your state senator now. It's a profound honor to do this work. I'm serving in some pretty esteemed company. Leader Harris has been phenomenal in helping me to find my footing in Springfield. He and I have been friends for many years, and A number of the other electeds on here, obviously Alderman Osterman, Alderman Cappleman, Alderman Martin, Alderman Vasquez. I think we have a pretty kick-ass team up on the North Lakefront right now. So it's a great time for me to be doing this work. So the other thing I probably should mention too is I served on the local school council at Brenneman for some years, 2010 to 2015. So I think that's always an important bullet for me to mention to folks in the neighborhood. I live at Windsor and Clarendon, so that's where I am in Uptown. That's literally where I live. The 7th District stretches all the way up to Howard Street to Rogers Park and Lincoln Square. And why don't I give you a few updates? Leader Harris did a great job giving an overview of the budget. So the only thing I want to double click there on is the Back to Business program, that $300 million for small business. I'm really excited about that. I was on the phone yesterday with the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, which is the state's economic development agency. And they are the good thing I'm excited about is they've already been proactively reaching out to the electeds from this area to get our input on how to reach out to they have this kind of hub and spoke model for how to do this small business assistance, working with the chambers like the Uptown Chamber, Rogers Park Business Alliance for the North Edgewater Chamber, the Lincoln Square Chamber, to make sure that they've got the right partners that can reach some of the harder to reach small businesses that sometimes don't have the capacity or the technical know-how to navigate these programs. And so that, I think it means good things for our small businesses in the next round. I'm really excited to congratulate the Uptown Chamber on the Al Fresco grant. It's always good to see these resources coming down to the local level. Great job with that. I'm really excited to be out in Argyle this summer for Nights on Argyle. I'm looking forward to being in person this summer. And so a couple of things I want to talk about legislatively that I introduced the bill that would create a child tax credit for working parents all across the state of Illinois. In this community, we've got a lot of parents that are struggling, that are essential workers, frontline workers, probably a family of 4 making $30,000, $35,000 a year. I come from a family like that. So one of the first things I wanted to do was to introduce legislation that can bring some economic relief to those families. I am dead last in seniority in the Senate. And so I don't kid myself that I'm not steering the boat, more of a constructive voice in some of the debates around taxation and assistance for our residents. So I'm excited to say that bill was heard in the Senate Revenue Committee last month, which is a big step. And I look forward to continuing to work to get that tax credit implemented in some form, hopefully in the next spring or maybe even before then. And then the other initiative that I did right away that was a pretty big one was, it's my observation that in our neighborhood, there are a lot of people who are at the lower end of the economic spectrum that don't have access to health insurance. And so they're finding themselves in emergency rooms, they're finding themselves in clinics. And so the first thing I proposed was that we look at the Medicaid program and increase eligibility up to 200% of the federal poverty level so that we get more people who are falling through the cracks, falling through the so-called donut hole, that don't have insurance, don't have employer-sponsored insurance, but are working 2 or 3 different jobs and doing everything that they should be doing to be able to thrive, but aren't able to get in front of a doctor. And so that initiative will be worked on this summer in a context of a number of other proposals that we saw in the governor's report, healthcare feasibility report that was put out in May, that this particular proposal may become part of a broader set of initiatives that altogether will help to bring more of our constituents in this community access to health insurance. And so I'm going to continue to work on that. And then there were just so much. I think I came into the Senate at a great time because we really did pass a lot of great legislation this session. If you've read my newsletter, and I put in the chat a link so that you can go to my website and sign up for that newsletter, because I like to update constituents every week or so on what's happening. I've got a pretty good, thorough list of bills that we passed, but I want to talk about a few that I think are pretty relevant to Uptown. So one of my proudest votes this session was on the bill called the Illinois Way Forward Act, which has actually passed both chambers, which would prohibit the state from doing any contracts with immigrations and customs enforcement and detaining immigrants across the state of Illinois. So there's 3 of these detention centers across the state. There's one in Pulaski, one in McHenry, and one in Kankakee. As the son of a refugee, the son of an immigrant, I'm happy to see that we are moving in the right direction in terms of how we interact with welcoming citizens to our state. And I was just really proud to cast the vote in support of that legislation and help to get other people to vote for that legislation at the 11th hour. The other bill that I'm really proud of is legislation that would, for the first time, require schools to start teaching Asian American history. As we all know, Uptown is a really diverse community. I always like to say that this is the envy of the country. Everybody wants to be like Uptown and neighborhoods that are in the 7th District because of our diversity. I think it's important that we teach young people about the contributions of all people. A couple of years ago, the state legislature moved to start requiring that LGBTQ history be taught in curriculum in our schools, which is the first openly gay state senator. I was happy to see that. Happy to see that we're now going to be teaching Asian American history. There was another bill that would require the teaching of African American history. So I think all of this collectively is great for equity, and is certainly great for communities like the 7th District and like Uptown and our young people. And then another bill I wanted to talk about is there's a mental health bill that would require that when people are in a mental health crisis and they dial for help, or someone dials for help, that we will be pivoting away from having a police officer show up in those instances, because as we often know in Uptown, the person that is needed in a mental health crisis is not usually a law enforcement officer, but it's a social worker or somebody that has the training and a professional experience to be able to de-escalate the situation and help that person to find access to the help that they need, right? The therapy, and to get stabilized and to get on a long-term treatment plan. And so I was happy to support that bill. Mental health is one of my big priorities. I didn't mention this at the outset, but my 2 biggest priorities as a state senator is dealing with economic disparities in the 7th District, as I talked about with the child tax credit, and then dealing with health disparities for people who are struggling with mental health. I sit on the Behavioral Mental Health Committee. I'm the vice chairman of the Health Access and Availability Committee, so I've got a good platform to work on those issues. And then lastly, I know we've got a number of condo owners in Uptown. We have a bill in the Senate right now that would require that when condos are sold, or there's any kind of decisions that are made on the disposition of condos, that the majority of people that would be a part of the decision-making on that would have to be people who actually live in the condo. And so I've heard from a number of my constituents who are condo owners in Uptown. I've got a ton of condo owners in Edgewater, the Association of Sheridan condo owners, just lots and lots of people that have been in the community for decades, who own condos, and who I'm very much interested in helping them remain long-term residents in this community. And so I've been paying close attention to condo legislation and welcome any input from some of our small business owners here who may also own condos in the community. And so I'll stop there. That's probably a mouthful. I encourage you to read the newsletter, because there's a lot more detail in that document. Anytime you need any help, I like to tell people I want to have a transparent and open office. In the 7th District, there is nothing that anyone in this community is going through that I haven't seen firsthand. And so I don't want anybody to feel a sense of shame or a sense of hesitation about coming to me if you need help with mental health stuff. If you're having trouble holding on to your business and you're falling behind in your rent, you don't have access to utilities, your electric bill is behind. These are not things that you're going to have anybody judging you for in my office. I'm literally in this seat because I want to help people like that. And so consider an open door to my office for anything that you might need. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Simmons. And Representative Harris, I understand you have a hard stop around 12:45. I wanted to just quickly ask you, in terms of all of the incredible work that both of you guys are doing, what do you feel like that you're working on right now will have the biggest impact that will be felt in Uptown in the near future, as we all look to bounce back from this very, very challenging year and a half or so?
I think it's a lot of what Senator Simmons was talking about. You know, we really have to sort of reimagine how we provide supports to families and to businesses. I think we've seen a lot of things in what were old models that are just not going to work again if they did work before. So as we think about delivering healthcare to people, how and when is that delivered? How do they access it? How do we make sure that we're reducing the shame and stigma of so many people who really need, mental health or substance abuse treatment? I'm a person who has dealt with both those issues in his life, and I was very lucky to be able to, access resources. But there are a lot of folks that can't. Being sure that that message goes forth, that like Senator Simmons said, but also reducing the disparities that we've seen in COVID. We've got to improve the equity for our schools, for our housing, for our jobs, for access to government services, and that includes, language access for, many folks in communities around here. So there's just a lot of work to do. And I think we're off on a nice track to do it.
Great, thank you very much. And I wanted to wish all of you a happy Pride Month. I always think of you, Representative Harris, as taking an incredible role in leadership and getting us to where we are today. So thank you for all of your leadership in that area as well. Appreciate it. And let's take one more back to you, Senator Simmons, in terms of, I know when we first, I had the opportunity to meet you upon your being our newest political leader for the Uptown area, that affordable housing has also been an extremely important piece for you. And I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are going forward on how legislation is going to impact Uptown in that regard.
Yeah. So, I am, by way of introduction, so I like to tell people I grew up in affordable housing. I literally grew up in scattered site public housing in Lincoln Square. Scattered site housing was first built on the north side in 1981. It was a result of a Supreme Court decision, the Gautreaux decision of 1976, that required the Chicago Housing Authority to stop segregating lower income Black families. And so my family was literally one of the first to benefit from Gautreaux housing. And I think I turned out pretty good. Is now the state senator for this community and fighting for all these issues that don't just affect affordable housing residents, but affect the broad gamut of the community. I like to think that I'm fighting for the next generation of young people to have those exact same opportunities. I always tell people that is literally my marching orders to state senators, to give the next generation exactly the opportunities that I've had. But to your question, I was really excited to see that we passed this affordable housing omnibus bill that is going to create grants for affordable housing development. This is something that developers oftentimes say that they're not able to find. And so, in the city of Chicago, you might find people, getting access to tax increment financing or community development block grants, but those resources are often limited, and oftentimes they move with the vicissitudes of the partisan leadership that we see coming out of Washington. These particular affordable housing resources are going to be coming directly from the state, and they're going to be available immediately. And so, this is going to be great for developers, not just on the south and west side of Chicago, but up here as well. As I asked about that as we were putting together that package. And, the reality is we've got a shortage, I believe, of 120,000 affordable housing units in the city of Chicago. We know I asked the Woodstock Institute to put together a scorecard for me when I came in as state senator for the 7th district. And we know that the squeeze in terms of the amount of people who are rent burdened is really excessive in the 7th district. The number of people who are giving 4 out of 40 or 50% of their income to rent is increasing. And so, we've got to be using that $300 million in that affordable housing to build new housing, obviously, but we also really have to be looking to preserve the naturally existing affordable housing that's in this community that we're seeing disappear at an alarming rate. And then there's another of other bills that are responsive to the affordable housing crisis. There's a bill that would allow local municipalities to start to implement rent control, right? Or at least not have a ban on rent control at the local level. I'm a co-sponsor of that legislation. We've struggled to get the support that we need to actually get that bill up for a vote in the Senate, but it did move a little further in the House in the past session. So that does give me some encouragement.
Great, thank you. All right, well, let's take it a little more local here. And I understand, so I want to thank all alderpersons for joining us here. I know Uptown is just a tiny little sliver of Alderman Martin and Vasquez's ward, but I appreciate both of you joining us. And I understand, Alderman Martin, you have a hard stop at 1 o'clock, so I have a couple questions for you. The first one being around business support. So I know that there is a suite of reforms that in the mayor's office and programs to support small businesses that they are calling Shy Biz Strong Initiative. One of the items in the package is reforming the public way use permitting process, cutting down on the time it takes for businesses to get a sign or sidewalk cafe permit, which can take upwards of 3 to 6 months. Curious to hear your thoughts on that that package and any other small business reforms that you're in the process of supporting.
Yeah, thanks for that great question, Jackie, and thanks everybody for allowing me to participate. I think that there are a lot of really strong ideas in that package, and it's something that we've reached out to our various chambers, letting them know we're interested in knowing what their feedback is. I think things that have gotten a lot of press, like the 10 p.m. curfew on packaged goods, is something that we heard loud and clear from both residents and businesses that they're not supportive of that. So we've shared that with the administration and with colleagues, and really want to make sure that what ultimately is passed is reflective of the needs that folks have felt, of course, acutely during the pandemic, but also previously. So in addition to what you mentioned, Jackie, in terms of the permit process for signs, I'd say A-frames, being able to legalize those is something that we've heard from a lot of our businesses they'd really like to see. So that's the sort of feedback that I find really helpful, is we're talking with colleagues in the administration about what is something that ultimately can get the requisite support to pass. Some other areas of with regard to businesses that we're actively exploring or already pushing. So one would be working to relax some restrictions on allowing walk-up windows to happen, especially knowing that during the pandemic, folks have had to reduce their footprint. There's still a lot of anxiety and pain that folks are working through, but also from a public health standpoint, we hope that this is that we're really turning a corner in an aggressive way when it comes to battling the pandemic, but we also need to be prepared if, God forbid, we have another variant come up or even something else significant. So I think being able to learn from past practices to inform where we're going is going to be important. I think that that walk-up window piece is a good example of that. Same thing with regard to eligibility for access to SPIF. It's something that Alderman Vasquez and I have talked about a lot recently. One aspect that I've heard from some folks in the Uptown area concerns taverns being able to access SPIF funds to improve the exterior of their businesses. So that we've been in active conversation with DPD and a few colleagues about what exact form that could take and how we could move things forward. The last thing I'll mention is with regard to Arba Funds, so the American Rescue Plan Act. We have $1.9 billion that the city's going to be getting over the course of the next year or so. The first tranche is, my understanding, the first half is in our bank account already. And so as we have conversations in the coming months, especially leading up to the budget season, be really helpful to know, not just within the Shy Biz Strong proposal, but outside of that, what are the sort of one-time in particular business supports that would be most useful. One example that someone had mentioned to me not too long ago was folks who have licenses with regard to liquor, not being able to utilize those fully, especially at the outset of the pandemic. So one of our colleagues, Byron Sigcho Lopez, introduced an ordinance that a number of us have co-sponsored, proposing that we use some of the federal funds to reimburse folks for the time that they were not able to use the permit that they already purchased. So any ideas that folks have would be greatly appreciated. And I'll put in the chat the best way to reach out to our office to ask us questions, as well as to provide feedback.
Great, thank you so much. I understand Alderman Vasquez also has a 1 p.m. hard stop. So I'll throw a question that we prepared for him his way. And then as we get to the other aldermen on the call, feel free to give your thoughts to these questions as well. I've kind of teed up a question for each of you, but obviously would love input from any of you on these questions, and appreciate you guys squeezing in time to join us. Alderman Vasquez, in terms of under the safety theme, I have a question here. Both residents and businesses have noticed an increase in safety concerns in Uptown during the COVID-19 pandemic phase, especially with less pedestrian traffic. Can you speak to some interventions that the city's working on to keep crime at bay as summer continues to blossom?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I think a lot of the conversations we had even before COVID is really about what public safety is and how we need to, I believe, reimagine what public safety is. So when we think about what the current model presents, it's to be completely honest, reactive. When we talk about police or other measures, they tend to show up after incidents occur. They don't necessarily prevent them from occurring. So I think creating the kind of atmosphere where people aren't incentivized to engage in that activity by investing in communities is something we've talked about, since coming into office. But I think it's even more important now looking at budgets. I think that's really what's going to determine how we view safety going forward. And, there are different terms, like, some folks have brought up the term defund CPD, but I prefer to really look at it as a conversation about budget reprioritization. That if we look at how much funds we get through taxpayer dollars and how we best allocate them, we could find things that help really bolster a community, that increase traffic by making sure we have more affordable housing and can kind of grow community. So I'm proud and happy, along with Alderman Martin, to be part of like the ADU pilot or the accessible dwelling units, to be able to provide more housing, because if you get more people, they will be the ones that increase that traffic at your business districts and provide the kind of presence that would mitigate some of that safety concern. I think also looking at the mental health options that Senator Simmons mentioned, and stuff that we have been working on at the city level. If you provide that, you end up with scenarios where you don't have that activity on the front end, and I think that ends up with much better results for business districts and communities, and a better use of taxpayer dollar. Right? I think we've seen that doing it the current model, not only do we not get the results, but you end up losing more money through police misconduct settlements. We're looking at about $52 million average every year. And I think we're over $800 million that have already been spent there. So I think that's a lot of the conversation that we look at, but also being able to reimagine the public space. So if you want to create more traffic, something that we've done in Lincoln Square is create the Ainsley Arts Plaza and create the kind of experiences that draw more people out. And so I think the expanded outdoor dining that was introduced during COVID is extremely helpful. I think looking at shared streets and kind of re-envisioning that makes sense. And so as Alderman Martin has said, we've worked on not only supporting like the local businesses, but also advocating for retail to be able to use a sidewalk similarly as restaurant and bars, because that's been what inhibited being able to like close off Clark Street, for example, is the restaurants and bars are for it. But if retail doesn't have the same opportunity to be able to showcase their wares to the public, it's a non-starter. So we've been working on that with, talking to BACP to advocate for more of that. And I think if you do that, if you create more community, you end up with a safer community, as opposed to thinking that, the kind of the carceral system that has been in place is going to get that done.
Great, thank you. And before we lose Alderman Martin, I want to also hear from Alderman Cappleman on this topic, but Alderman Martin, I'd like to get your thoughts on as the west side of Uptown continues to boom, grow, change. I'd like to get, I know we have this Clark Street corridor study just teed up after, I remember when we all met, I want to say 3 years ago, to urge the city's support of doing this corridor study. And gosh, here we are. And it is actually happening, which is the good news, but would like to get your thoughts on how we move forward with the transformation of the Clark Street corridor on the west side here of Uptown, which I know kind of splits. You have the west side, and Alderman Cappleman has the east side of the street. I know you guys have already been working together on that, but Alderman Martin, thoughts on where that's going to go?
Yeah, I think it's headed in a very constructive and exciting direction. So as you mentioned, we finally got city approval for this. We're going to be moving forward with it. And I think it's a way to accelerate a lot of the work that's already underway. So figuring out what our anchor institutions are, places like Black Ensemble Theater, which have such tremendous draw within and outside of our community, and then saying several things on top of that. One, what are the types of businesses that would best complement anchors like that, so that as we continue to see generational turnover, and I think at one point upwards of 50% of the buildings along that stretch from Montrose to Lawrence had either been sold or were on the market. So we know that that turnover is happening. Share that information, letting those prospective and current property owners know this is going to be the best fit for what's already going on there. Second, identifying architecturally significant buildings, places like the Issel building on the southwest corner of Wilson and Clark, I think we want to make sure that we're maintaining, even if the use inside of those buildings might change, because again, we want to maintain that really beautiful character. And then lastly is figuring out from an infrastructure standpoint, what we want to do to make that as bike and pedestrian friendly as possible. So I know in the chat, someone from Uptown Bikes had asked, what's being considered with regard to Broadway. I know that my office, the 48th Ward office, have been thinking about what to do in that context, and I'm sure the 40th Ward north of Foster, where we leave off. So we just want to make sure that we're ensuring that areas like that really critical part of Clark are places where folks can live, work, and play simultaneously.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you to Alderman Cappleman and Osterman for being extremely patient. I know you're chomping at the bit to jump in and share some information. So we appreciate our tried and true Alderman hanging in there, getting their turn, and want to thank both of you for your continued leadership and service to Uptown, and for your great partnership with Uptown United. I feel like it's gone in a really great direction in terms of responsiveness, and your staffs are just so great about answering questions and getting to us and participating in all of the myriad Zoom calls that we've had. So it's been great to have you guys really in on it. So let's go to Alderman Osterman, and of course we're going to try to get your questions here. We're going to go to 1:30, so we have some time here left to get to the questions you guys are posting, and I'm reading those, and we're going to.
James and I aren't going anywhere. We're hanging around.
Good.
I like the young guys.
Right. So we appreciate that. So Osterman, let's go with you on the Cta Redline Project. I know the construction on the Red Purple Modernization Project of $2 billion is in full swing. How about a quick update on that?
Well, one, I'll say that you'll notice that James is smiling in this case because he only has the Lawrence station to worry about, and I've got Argyle, Berwyn, and Bryn Mawr. So this is a project that all of us who've been on the call or been in the community for a long time know has been a long time coming. I think people have seen the work that the Wilston station has done in helping improve the infrastructure and accessibility of transportation at Wilson, which is going to increase economic development, small businesses, places like Chicago Market, and others that are going to grow. The Red Line project has started north of Leland and is going to go for the next couple of years. Lawrence and Berwyn are physically closed. There's temporary stations at Argyle and Bryn Mawr. The key thing that we've been focusing on, and I will say working very closely with Uptown United and Martin and the entire team, is to really find ways to support the local businesses through the project. That's the main thing. And COVID coming over the last 16 months, our residents have been really focused on supporting local businesses. We want to keep that buy local momentum carrying through, so the places like First Sip and other restaurants and other businesses that are impacted by the construction and dust are going to be going well. There's a program the CTA, at our encouragement, is taking advantage of, which is going to be Open for Business campaign, where there's a marketing group. So we're going to highlight specific businesses throughout the corridor. When this is done, it's going to have a lasting impact. I think it's going to impact development around the stations, also on Broadway. So it's a huge project, but it's one that we are going to work side by side with the businesses and residents throughout the project every step of the way.
Great. Thank you for that. Alderman Cappleman, let's hear from you on our topic that I know you and I have chatted quite a bit about over the last few years, and that is the increase in our unhoused neighbors in Uptown, and actually, of course, throughout the city, unfortunately. I know you've been on the forefront of this. Any new initiatives from the city to tackle this urban challenge?
Thank you, Jackie, for asking that. I seem to live and breathe this whole topic lately, especially with COVID. It's really exacerbated the issue. In 2003, the city of Chicago adopted a program to end homelessness, and it created some great ideas that came from previous participants and providers that all came together and with experts. And it was an incredible program. It talked about the housing first model. It talked about the issue of social services working in silos, not coordinating and collaborating with one another, and the need to, when you're helping someone who has maybe paranoid schizophrenia, overwhelming them with a lot of different people actually makes it worse rather than better. We didn't get too far. I think that program was put on the shelf, so we revisited it in 2012. I did serve on that task force. My input was, let's implement the 2003 plan. Let's implement a plan. That was 9 years later. We've made some strides, but we're still not quite addressing that. There are still people falling through the cracks, and I have a person that I'm working with right now who is experiencing homelessness. He has disorganized schizophrenia. He's 48 years old. He has gangrene in his right foot, so he's in a wheelchair. Very disorganized. He's been homeless for about 18 months. Talking to him, he's not wearing any clothes from the waist down, but he'll put things over him. He has about, when I was talking with him, I saw around 30, 40 bed bugs all over him. We tried to, and there were also around 15 large bags of items that people donated to help him because they saw this man in crisis. And, you know, I'm glad people wanted to respond to help. The problem was he was without an ID, and he couldn't go to a number of different places because he was guarding his possessions. So working with the city of Chicago, DFSS, I said, we used to have storage lockers. Can we put his items in storage lockers? DFSS stopped funding for that, so we couldn't do that. A police officer stepped in and helped, and I had 4 different social services working with him, but they were all facing roadblocks. They had to finally get him to a hospital to deal with the bed bugs before they could address his living situation. He went to 3 different hospitals. All 3 hospitals turned him away, according to him. I went back to DFSS and talked about this issue of, and I called 311 myself 3 times. It takes 8 hours to pick up someone who is experiencing homelessness and living on the streets. And the other problem is, to get picked up, you need a cell phone. This man with disorganized schizophrenia can't keep track of his cell phone. So 311 couldn't find him. When I stood out there Saturday morning and waited for DFSS to come at 12:30, they said they could come. And when they learned that he had numerous bed bugs on him, they went away, they left. So I have informed the mayor about this situation and said, this is not working. What we need, and it's a program, and Alderman Vasquez touched on it. It's the assertive community treatment teams. This is a group of people that are like a nurse practitioner and a social worker who go out there to that person this person's not able to make phone calls, is not able to follow up on the simplest things. That person this team is it's vital. The problem is we have very few of these teams because they rely on Medicaid funding. So I've already talked to State Senator Simmons about this. We need to increase Medicaid funding for this program so that we can help Jim, who's experiencing this, but not just Jim. I can name off the top of my head 7 other people who are experiencing the same exact situation. And all these people were evicted either from supportive housing, or they were evicted from nursing homes, or they were evicted from shelters. And once you're evicted from one of those places, your trust is gone, which is understandable. But that makes it much, much more difficult to gain trust from that person to follow through what's needed to do to get them stabilized. Because, and this is my conversation with Mayor Lightfoot, it is cheaper for the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois to provide free housing with wraparound services. That is cheaper than having someone live on the streets where their medical costs quadruple. And the people I named have had at least 20, 30, 40 arrests on top of that. So my dream is to really get a program in place that helps the most vulnerable who are falling through the cracks. And after we do that, we have to give them housing. And as State Senator Simmons acknowledged, we're 120,000 units short of affordable housing. And the largest group of renters earn less than 30% of the AMI. And this group, 75% of them experience extreme financial hardship. These are the people that need our attention. And this really tests us as a society, how we respond to the most vulnerable. You can see I'm very excited about all of this, but
I know this is I know it's a topic that's near and dear to your heart. It's heartbreaking. I
was crying when the Salvation Army, their van, refused to pick this guy up. I said, I guess he's just going to die.
Yeah, and it's and it's of course not unique to Uptown, but it's
all over the city, all over the country.
Yeah, exactly. I have family that lives in San Francisco and Seattle, and they were here visiting when it was safe to do so, and made their way through the viaduct where they were running along the lakefront, and we had a whole very difficult conversation about the fact that this is there's not easy answers around this, and I appreciate your taking it to heart, and also Senator Simmons, and I know Alderman Osterman too, in terms of understanding that there isn't easy answers to it, but that we've got to figure this out. And so I appreciate your persistence in trying to come up with funding and solutions and looking at best practices across the country in terms of what we can be doing. So thank you for your continued efforts in that. I would like to go back to Alderman Osterman, and I know safety has been on your mind quite a bit too, in terms of best practices and interventions, although I think there is a little bright spot from a safety standpoint in terms of statistics that while on the surface it might look like to some that Uptown continues to have our challenges in that area, I believe statistics have shown through the pandemic that we've actually had less issues as it relates to crime. Do I have that right?
I'm laughing, but not in a good way, Jackie. I've never been, I was never really good in math in school. So statistics when it comes to crime never really matter to me. The truth is, if this weekend on Argyle it's safe, or at the end of school with Sent High School or Uplift, or if people can walk down Truman, by Truman College on Wilson Avenue when it's safe, and we can extend that this summer, then it's safe. Statistics can lie, and we had I live near the Broadway Armory, and it's been quiet, and then in a matter of an instant, there's a shooting. Safety is something that we all have to work on together. It's critical, and I think we've proven in Uptown that, and this kind of goes to it, that crime has been able to be reduced, but it's been done through partnerships, through working with nonprofits, through expanding programs at the Boys and Girls Club, or bringing in programs like the BAM program or the WOW program, or hiring young people. So for the business people on the call, the best thing we could do, if you want, look for a teenager or someone who is a college student who needs a job, and try to find them a job, because the more that we can do that to support young people, it keeps us safe. And I think that's kind of our big issue. It extends around the city. We're working on civilian oversight of police, try to make sure that the community is at the driver's seat when we look at policy. So now that it's warm again and our minds are kind of focused on it, so Alderman Cappleman and myself and all the aldermen, we don't like getting phone calls at night on the weekends because it's typically something bad. But it's the real work that we do day to day, building strong connections that make a difference. And I want to quickly shout out to everyone on the call that they should meet Mike Simmons, our new state senator. He's going to be a rising star in the state Senate. Please take his energy this summer, invite him to your business, tell him your story. He's an example of someone who went to school in Uptown and has gone on to great things, and he's got a bright future ahead of us. But in our neighborhood, it's all of us working together to make sure that we're safe. And while things have gotten better, we got a long way to go.
Thank you. And speaking of bright spots, with the challenges that we've just discussed, the commercial real estate development community is very bullish on Uptown. They continue to want to invest in our community and see incredible opportunities here. So I know there's kind of a tale of two cities from the standpoint of that's exciting news in terms of people wanting to come here and build commercial and residential buildings for folks to come and join us and living in Uptown. So Alderman Cappleman, I'd love to get your take. We heard from Alderman Martin about the Clark Street corridor transformation and how exciting that is. And just in general, and certainly Uptown United is working jointly with Alderman Cappleman and Alderman Osterman and as stakeholders listening and offering direction to the commercial real estate community as they want to invest in Uptown and how to do that in a way that keeps Uptown. And it's a fine line to walk, but I think we're doing a great job with it, if I may say so, in terms of Uptown United and working with both aldermen to figure this out. Thoughts on the Clark Street corridor and other development opportunities, and then we will open it up for questions.
Well, I think about in 2000, the Urban Land Institute did a study in Uptown, and they talked about what are the things that need to happen to awaken the retail. And because it's clearly there were a lot of issues. And I remember looking at that study back in 2000. I was a member of the Uptown Chicago Commission at the time. And when I ran for office, gosh, Harry and I have been in office now 10 years. I ran on a platform of following that ULI study, and we followed it to the letter of the law, and it worked. It worked much more so than we ever dreamed possible. I mean, Time Out magazine in October named Uptown one of the coolest communities on the planet. I mean, who would have ever thought that? Who would have ever even thought to imagine that? And the violent crime in this area, we've always been, okay, there's a shooting. It was always, okay, is it Rogers Park or Uptown? And sometimes Edgewater, but usually Uptown in Rogers Park. We had the lowest violent crime rate ever. And it was a lot of work, just as Harry Osterman said, it's a lot of people working together. And what I found that was key for me, because I can be guilty of being a micromanager, is that I can't. I had to let that go and let some of the key players get involved. And that was Uptown United. I mean, Martin knows that I've hit heads with him. And he was right, and I really started following along, and I'm now working with Double Door, the Baton. When the Baton was announced coming in, I started crying. I probably one of the questions I'm going to have is the Uptown Theater. That's still a work in progress, and there's headway being made, but this is nowhere we ever thought 10 years ago. So I want to use that same energy on that for Clark Street, because Clark Street's in serious trouble, as Alderman Martin alluded to. And the business model is not working anymore because it's not working across the country. People are ordering everything through Amazon. So we have to reinvent it. But I believe this study is going to give us a template, and we're going to have to trust it just like we trusted the ULI study and follow it to the letter of the law.
Jackie, can I touch on that real quick as
Please.
a follow-up?
Please.
So there will be growth in our community. We've seen it in Uptown. We've seen it in Edgewater. We'll see it in Rogers Park. I think the key thing for me is to try to make sure, as you say, that it's Uptown for Uptown. It's not a Schaumburg version of Uptown, which nobody wants. And I think for me specifically, when I look at like areas like Argyle with the rich tradition of Asian Americans, and now with people like Erin and Hoang and Jennifer, who are the second, third generation, who are now emerging leaders, I really want to make sure that as we look at development, one, it's got affordable housing. We passed an AR ordinance, so there will be affordable housing for people who can afford to live in Uptown. But two, that when we look at density and architecture, it reflects the culture of our community, and that, you know, as we've always known, in certain, if you're on Lawrence by the theaters or whether you're on Argyle Street, that it's basically you're there. You're not in some sanitized, shiny version of it. So there's a lot of work that we've got ahead of us on that, but we want to make sure that we look 10 years from now and we know that we're in Uptown and not some other place.
Yeah, and it is a fine balance that we have to make, and we at Uptown United work especially hard at pressing upon the development community as we are one of several groups that they come and meet with, especially those that have not been to Uptown before, to share the Uptown story and have them understand where we've come from and where we are headed, and how we can maintain our diversity and our unique offerings. And one of the reasons we love living here so much. And the Clark Street corridor is an incredible opportunity to help to figure that out. There's going to be plenty of public input opportunities. There's already some projects moving forward through private development, but we will still have an opportunity to have a voice in what's going to be happening there. And I appreciate the city's finally the attention, the city and some funding to give us this opportunity to study this corridor in a way that is thoughtful and going to bring about the change that, you know, we're not going to all like everything that's decided upon, but we will get there. So we've got about 15 minutes left here. Let's get to some of your questions. As you suspected, Alderman Cappleman, there's a lot of interest about the next steps with the Uptown Theater. So if you could share with us, and sounded like, in looking at some of the questions, some frustration around how long this has taken. I know my heart was broken, and I think you and I even talked about that when the pandemic hit, that this was going to be one of those projects that felt the full brunt of the slowdown. So thoughts on or updates on where we're at with Uptown Theater?
So I talk with Jerry Michelson often. I believe had this pandemic not hit, we would have started. But this is where we are, and this is across the world, so we're not alone in this at all. People want this Uptown Theater started yesterday, and so do I. Lenders are right now a little cautious because everything's been so unpredictable. And there is a timing for everything. And some people want me to be very open about who all the lenders are and what exactly the anticipated organizations are that are going to help finance this. or be partners in this. And anyone who's run any type of a large organization knows that you can't just announce all that. That actually ends up hurting the process and getting this actually accomplished. So my goal is to have this Uptown Theater open. It's been vacant since I think 87, 82, I can't remember, many, many years. So the good news is we've never, ever been this close. 10 years ago, we would have never dreamed you'd be at this. And I owe a lot of favors to a lot of state elected officials in helping me get this. But that said, Jerry Michelson is, back on track on working with a lot of different interested parties who are focusing on this. It may mean that we'll do naming rights. He started a not-for-profit section to also assist with this. We're going to do everything we can. The ULI report says that doing the Uptown Theater was crucial. And that's why, for instance, we did this, the colored wheel, that area in front of the Riv. We did that to attract investors, knowing that would also help spur the Uptown Theater coming along. So I'm going to ask that you be patient. It's on my radar. It's one of the reasons why I ran for alderman.
Yeah, as a volunteer leader in the community, it's when I step out of the community and I'm through my business and whatnot, it is one of the questions I get quite a bit. And I would suggest too that that much is being done and it's a treasured building in the community. Uptown United's position has been absolutely, let's do everything we can, but in the meantime, let's focus on the opportunities around it. What are the things what else can we do proactively as we continue to look for that building to be brought back to its original glory. So it's good to hear your thoughts on that. We have another question from.
Hey, Jackie.
Yes.
If I could just say on the Uptown Theater, so I just confirmed with my staff that we actually have set aside 10 million at the state level for Uptown Theater. And that's recent since I've arrived. So I do want to put that out there that should be helpful. And then a couple other Uptown related appropriations I forgot to mention. So we also are putting $350,000 into fire safety and building renovations for the Institute of Cultural Affairs at Sheridan and Lawrence. Also for the Preston Bradley Uptown Church, which serves a number of vulnerable residents in the area. So since I've come into office, we have specifically designated fundings in the capital bill to fix up those properties in addition to Uptown building. And then someone asked about lead replacement. I've also put some money aside to do lead pipe replacements on the northern end of the 7th district in the area that is adjacent to Evanston, which I would say is probably outside of Uptown, probably the most disinvested part of the 7th district. So I should have said all that at the beginning of the meeting. I'm getting used to being a public official and a state senator, but oftentimes people want to know about where investments are going. And so it's important that people know about those.
Great. Thank you for jumping in. I appreciate your educating everybody a little more on all of that. We did get a question from Seth about 811 Uptown and what's going on with the retail space. I happen to know a little bit about that because my parents happen to live in that building. But Alderman Cappleman, if you want to give an update, I know I've been seeing there's been a bit of a union issue that's impacted the plans for the grocery store that has committed to the space. But any updates from you, Alderman?
We signed all the permits to put the signs up, and we're working with the owner to open it up. It's a unique type of a store. It's geared more towards very healthy eating for a lot of people who are vegetarians, especially. I don't eat much meat at all, so I know I'll be going there a lot. But Jackie, you may know more about this than I do.
I just know that my parents, who are 83 and 94, are looking just for a place in the bill at that. And when it was supposed to be the Treasure Island, and then that blew up. They're very excited about the lease has been signed by a grocery store whose presence is out, but they only have one of them in the far western suburbs.
And Martin just put that in there.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't
Ruby.
see that. Thank you, Martin.
I couldn't remember the name.
Yeah,
Martin.
Peter
Thank-
Ruby. It's a weird name, so I can never remember it either. Peter Ruby is the name of the grocery store. They stubbed their toe on some union stuff, which probably isn't too surprising to a lot of folks who, well, we deal with the development community, and they come into Chicago and they don't always do all that the right way. So I believe that has slowed that down in terms
Okay.
of the construction process because of the stubbing their toes with the union. So, but there, it still is moving forward. It's just probably going to be delayed. And at some point, my mom will be able to go down the elevator and buy a thing of milk instead of having to go farther than that. So that is coming. Let's see, what else do we have here? Chris White would like to know about the incoming federal funds and the priorities around those funds.
Which funds?
The I'm sorry, let me back up. The let's see, Alderman Martin, Hayden, Vasquez, and others are drafting an aldermanic lead appropriations ordinance to spend the incoming federal funds. And the question is, and what are their priorities around those? What are your as an alderman priorities around those funds? I think you kind of talked a little bit about that.
I was told from the mayor's office and that a lot of those funds will come in grants that have very, very clear, specific ways that they are allowed to be spent. So I mean, I'm encouraging any alderman who wants to draft some ideas to please run that by the chief financial officer, who can also help enlighten them about what we are required to do in order to receive those funds.
Okay.
So let me, if I could, I think James and I are on the budget committee. There's going to be a lot of robust conversation about how we spend the money for this year and for next year. I chair the Housing and Real Estate Committee, and James is a member. And over the last 16 months, we've been able to put together over $100 million in rental assistance. So while we're kind of ready to move on to, get into the roaring 20s, COVID has left those people who were economically disadvantaged and challenged before COVID hit in a worse off place. So we want to make sure there's not a wave of evictions and try to make sure the renters can get some support through that. But we're going to all be participating in how that money is spent. But housing is a critical issue for me, trying to make sure that we're investing throughout the city of Chicago so that the growth that we've seen in Uptown is replicated in Englewood and in North Lawndale and other parts of the city, so we grow our entire city. But I want to put the money in the communities and have it work, but specifically related to housing.
Okay, and looks like we have time for maybe one last question here. There's a question about the Uptown Entertainment District, and of course it kind of went on a bit of a pause over the last year and a half. But the question is, when do you foresee that we'll have a plan, community and stakeholder engagement, coordinated marketing, branding, and an overlay of incentives to entice the kinds of businesses that survive in tandem, such as theaters, nightclubs, restaurants, and other amusements? Alderman Cappleman, do you want to jump in on that?
I mean, right now I requested a meeting earlier this morning with the owners of Double Door and the Department of Planning and Development to see what I can do to help spur, that along. I've met with the owners of the Baton they had all types of, again, issues opening up again and with inspections. And so it calls me to step in. just a lot of the Aragon has also had some issues with the snow, and there was some of the part of the structure fell, and now they're having issues with an elevator, and they can't fix it because the buildings made a mistake about the zoning of the property where the elevator went up. So my hands are really busy just meeting the very core issues of having them opening their doors. But I also believe that a lot of the art that's up in all throughout the Uptown area and the work that Uptown United is doing is this. It's all of us working together, and we are producing real results that we never would have dreamed possible 10 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna turn it back over
Timeline
to
Theater's coming to the northern anchor of the Uptown Entertainment District. So we're gonna bookend it just north of Argyle with a great live theater, one of the great institutions in Chicago that'll be coming there for many years to come. So more info on that to come.
Thank you, Alderman. Yeah, very excited about Timeline Theater. Martin, I'm going to turn it over to you for the last word, and we can wrap things up. And thank you so much to all of you for your time, and those of you who joined us. We have a great level of participation. Martin Sorge.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jackie, for your leadership and for moderating our discussion here today. Thanks to Alderman Cappleman, Alderman Osterman, Senator Simmons, Representative Harris, Alderman Vasquez, and Alderman Martin for joining us today and spending your time talking to our folks. It's always good to see you, and thanks again for all that you all do for our community. Just like to, before we sign off, encourage, I assume everyone here is on our website and gets our newsletters, but please stay tuned. Now that things are opening back up, we're going to be activating the neighborhood with a lot of great events and programs this summer. So stay tuned. I hope to see all your smiling faces sometime soon. So we'll talk to you all later. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.